Welcome to Your Mind is Trying to Kill You podcast. Join your host, Alexandros and co-host Vincent Byrne as they walk you through the deepest recesses of the mind and how it operates. They discuss all the reasons why our minds persistently get in the way of our evolution, growth, and our success. But crucially, they also teach you what you can do to change your destiny. And now, here's your host, Alexandros.
Hello and welcome to our 27th episode of the Your Mind is Trying to Kill You podcast. I am your host, Alexandros.
And I'm your co-host, Vincent Byrne.
And I am completely drawing a blank today as well because my friend Vincent is testing me. He says he's going to test me. He's going to test to see how prepared I am to answer his questions. So I'm listening, my friend. What's the question?
Okay. Well, I've heard you talk before about the idea of being a warrior. And I know that a lot of people's interpretation of the concept of warrior is that you're going to war with someone else, or your country's going to war with each other. So in that context, I think most people's view of a warrior is one who goes into battle with someone else. And years ago, I read the Dan Millman book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And that kind of had a different connotation. And I was just wondering what you think around the subject of being a warrior and the warrior that you describe yourself to be.
That is a really good question. I'm the kind of warrior that does not wage war, but defends oneself, one true self, from the war that the programs have waged ever since we were born. So being a warrior, as far as I'm concerned, is constantly defeating programming that has held me back on every level in my life, has held back my progress, has held back my expansion of consciousness, my awareness, my skill set, my wisdom, all this stuff. And if I don't do that, then the programs take over. And I believe the same thing happens with everyone else, but everyone else deals with it in their own way. Does this make sense?
Yeah. So I've heard it described as going to war with yourself, but you seem to be suggesting that you're not going to war with yourself. You're going to, and your mind, you're going to war with the contents of what may have creeped into your mind, and looking to either neutralize it or replace it with something that's actually better for you.
That's right. Because the self, what is the self? When we talk about the self, in most cases, we're not talking about the true self, which is to say, we're not talking about the higher self. We talk about the self that most people are aware of, which is the 3D self, the personality. And we know that the personality is made up of programs of all sorts. That personality is not who we really are. And not so ironically is what we shed after death.
So in terms of going to war, and I know we've talked before about dealing with the programming. So how does it become, why is it termed a warrior? Why do you term it as a warrior? Apart from the fact that you're going to war with the programs, but what's the symbolism involved in that?
Well, anyone who is aware of what the conditioning is doing to them is also well aware of the fact that this conditioning is very ruthless. It takes no prisoners, as they say here in America. It slays you. It will get you on your knees every chance it gets. So it is not a gentle creation. It's a violent, ruthless, and non-empathetic being, if we could call it a being. I mean, I'll call it a being, because a personality is some sort of an entity, some sort of a being. It's a side of the mind that wants to take over, right? If we let it. It's as if you have an AI car, and it wants to take over and pilot it itself. And now you have to fight with it. Like, let's assume that it's an AI that is not like made for you. It's an AI that's going up against you. And it's like, no, it is, you are more, I know best. So it takes over all the systems of the car and is trying to navigate it by itself. And you're like, no, you're not going to do that. I am the one who's holding the wheel. And so there's this constant battle between the two, and sometimes one takes over and sometimes the other takes over. Ideally, you get to completely disengage the AI and take control of the vehicle yourself.
So how do you get to a place where you like all the connotations, all of the myths and legends, etc., around being a warrior, involve, preparation for battle, discipline, been clear about instructions, all that sort of stuff. So, is there that aspect to it when you talk about being a warrior? Are there those aspects to it that you approach it from in that way? Or do you just, are you calling yourself a warrior just because you're fighting it? Do you approach it from almost like a military warrior kind of approach?
Absolutely, because the whole thing involves discipline. 100% discipline is a major aspect of this operation, and of course strategy. Because you're dealing with an enemy here, and even worse, you're dealing with an enemy that knows your weaknesses, right? So this is an extremely ruthless and dangerous enemy. So you have to be as prepared as you can. You have to be on your toes, as they say. You have to be ready to kick some ass here, even though you're kicking your own ass in some way, shape, or form.
So you got guys like Jocko Willink talking about discipline and freedom, and like he's talking about preparing for going into battle in the traditional sense of it, but he also used it in the context of being disciplined and structured and strategizing around how you actually organize your own life. So what does it look like when you are going about having your disciplines and your strategies in order to combat this enemy? What's it look like?
Well, once again, I think it's way worse an enemy than going to actual war. To have to deal with your mind, with your own mind, because your own mind, like I said, has an inside scoop of what's going on with you. So it's like having a demon that intimately can read all your thoughts and all your emotions and all your weaknesses and all your impetus, and then constantly screwing with you in order to get you to do one thing or another, or not do one thing or another. So What does it look like? Let's say you put down, if you want to know when it is that you should be going to war uh, with the mind, you have to sit down and write down all the things that you want out of your life. Okay. And what those things, in order to get them, what they involve.
Mm.
Then once you write them down, the next thing you have to do is monitor how you respond on a daily basis to the fact that you have to do X, Y, Z to arrive at this destination, right? So if you get up, let's say on a Monday morning, and you look at your to-do list, because there's always steps. I have to do this today, that tomorrow, and hopefully, presumably, you have been creating a schedule, some sort of an attack list in order to reach your goals, right? I mean, you know what you need to do. Let's say it's a shopping list. You need to go to the supermarket. You need to know what you need. And you need to know when you get there, where you're going to go find that stuff that you need. If you don't know either of those things, you'll be like aimlessly meandering throughout the place, not knowing what the fuck is going on, right? So ironically, this is what most people do. It's what how most people live their lives. But assuming that you know what it is you need to accomplish, you know that you need to get feta cheese, right? And you need to go down that department that or you're assuming that you're going to find that product. Now, if you don't want to go there, if you're like, I don't want to do this today,
Or you're a vegan.
or you're a vegan. That's right. And I was like, fuck that vegan shit, man. Go get what you need. There you go. If you need something, if you need to get somewhere, you need to strategize. And when something is in the way of that strategy, this is an obstacle that I call waging war on the side of your mind against you. So then you need to start creating a plan to defeat that motherfather. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if I'm one of those people who, I mean, I don't think people are necessarily, and I'm not suggesting you'd said this, but I don't think people are aimlessly sort of wandering around with no idea what they want. I think most people are in a mode where they're being dragged left, right, and center by the demands of family, kids, boss, job, whatever. So they're running politics, whatever. Yeah, running around to other people's agendas. So I think without realizing it, they've kind of got into this routine of having their control given away and been taken by various other people. Some in a sinister way, and others just because they're demanding. So how do you move from a place where you're in that scenario to a place where you start to take control? And I get the writing down of the list, but I mean, even that process, I mean, what would that typically look like? And are you writing a list, or are you just trying to pick on one or two things that you think you need to change? And typically, what would those kind of things be? Are you looking to change something in yourself, or are you looking to just list the things that you want for yourself?
I would list the thing I want to accomplish. I mean, that's
you want to accomplish.
the easy way of doing it, right? We're not talking about enlightenment here. Okay. Although ultimately, enlightenment is the warrior's goal.
Yeah. But accomplished could be, getting the courage to stand up on stage and speak at something. That's right. It doesn't necessarily have to be getting something tangible.
Well, that's something tangible as far as I'm concerned.
Well, tangible in the sense of it's not, bricks
But
and
like, it's not
mortar
a
or
car. Yeah.
steel, whatever. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so it's a case of setting out what you want to accomplish or what you want to achieve or what you want to get. So, okay, so you've got those things, or you've got a few of those things actually set out. So then what are we doing? Is it picking one of those things and writing down some kind of plan to get there? Is that it?
Well, yes. It's not just writing of course, you need to know of a way that could get you there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen. I mean, a lot of the times we want to do something, we don't know how to start. We don't know what to do.
Hmm.
Right? The law of attraction suggests that you don't have to know consciously of the way to get there. You just need to know, be clear on exactly what you want.
Hmm.
And then your subconscious mind is going to start taking the steps, giving you the synchronicities. We talked about that last week.
Hmm.
Giving you the synchronicities to help you move closer to achieving your goal.
Okay.
But at the same time here, what we're dealing with is all the things that want to hold you back. Right? This is what we'll go to war against. In other words, the programming that I talked about is that thing that tells you, who do you think you are? You know,
Hmm.
you're not anything special. You're shit. I mean, you're insignificant speck of dust. Um, and
Oh,
this is what you would need to go to war against.
okay.
Because if you let this kind of attacks stop you right there in that moment, then you're screwed. You're not going anywhere. That's
Okay.
what I'm talking about.
So in effect, by picking these goals or objectives, and you start to take a step towards them, you're almost smoking out the the programming, bringing it out into the open so as to see what's going on, and then once it's out in the open and you can see what it's saying, what it's doing, it brings up fears, it brings up what will people say, what if I'm going to fail, or I'm not good enough, nothing ever went right for me. It's identifying what they are. So once they're out in the open, what do we do then?
Well, that's when you start confronting yourself. And
Okay.
this is why it's not so easy to be a warrior of this kind, because you're not you can always disregard the enemy if the enemy is perceived to be outside of you. But when the enemy is inside of you and is puppeteering you in so many ways, how do you battle that? Right? Because this is like this is identical to the idea of having the devil telling you, what to do, or, go ahead, do it. It's no problem. Come on,
Yeah.
just take that nap, drink that beer, take that vacation. Man, you've been working so hard, dude. It's a short life. What are you gonna do? You're gonna work yourself to death? What's the point? Live a little.
It sounds like the idea of the devil is actually someone who's on our side for a lot of that, and that it's the voice on the other side telling us not to do it. That we should be battling not the devil's traditional voice as it's put forward.
Oh, the devil's traditional voice. See, if you're gonna talk about the devil or the idea of the devil, you have to consider that the devil is way smarter than you can ever be. So he will always outsmart you. And this is the concept of persuasion. Actually, ironically, what everyone that is inclined to be a marketing guru, or anyone who wants to be good at marketing, we call that persuasion. So the devil, as far as I'm concerned, is the most persuasive entity there is. And that is, I believe, what we are battling against. And when I say the devil, I mean the devil, right? I mean, the concept of the devil is there. It is the adversary. It's that which wants to entice you to take the easy way out.
Okay.
Because why not? Right? And it makes perfect sense. I mean, haven't you have to deal with this kind of dilemmas? What is the point? What's the point of laboring so hard? Right? Why wouldn't you just, retire and go to Hawaii or Mexico, whatever, and like sip on mojitos and margaritas all day?
So, okay, so this is the one telling us not to push ourselves, to keep us in our comfort zones, and therefore not to grow and not to confront these demons. So on the basis that we have them smoked out and we have them clear in front of us, so like what do we do to go into battle? Is it a case of having identified it, we push through anyway? Is that what we're looking to do? Obviously, using some of the techniques we've talked about before, such as affirmations, such as visualization, they can be hugely powerful in this kind of situation. But if you're thinking of it in terms of the warrior, I mean, what's the warrior doing?
The warrior is constantly aware of the tricks,
right,
of the mind.
And if he's a newbie warrior,
or if he's a newbie warrior, then what you have to do as a newbie warrior is identify what every urge you have is about. Where does it lead you? Right? I mean, it shouldn't be that hard. I'm thinking if you have the urge to just chill out and not act on any level, today I know that I could prepare my greenhouse for the winter and seed it and do all these things that I need to do. But I don't feel like doing that because I just want to chill out today. I've been working so hard. I've been doing all these things. I just want to watch Netflix all day and drink some beer. What's wrong with that? It's just absolutely, it's just totally reasonable. It's very reasonable. So all the things that you are tempted to do, usually when we say tempted, you see, whatever tempts you is something that harps on your weaknesses. So if whatever it is that you feel that you should be doing is not tempting you, and you're tempted to do something else, that should be a clear indication that what you're tempted to do is not favoring you.
Okay.
Now, you could say, as if you're stepping into this, as you said, as a newbie, it's important to realize that there are things to get clear on, and perhaps your life, what you're doing, your job, whatever it is that you've been engaged in, is not something that is your, let's say, is your mission in life. Let's say you haven't found that mission. Let's say you haven't found that vocation, that thing that feeds your soul. Then you might say, oh, if you're an accountant and you hate that shit and you want to be more creative, you want to be a writer, and you're tempted to not do the accounting work today and sit back and write, that doesn't mean that this is a temptation that is not serving you. You see, there are two ways of looking at this. First, we have to identify whether or not we have found the thing that feeds our soul. And secondly, when that's there, we have to attack everything that is trying to keep us from engaging with it.
I was just going to say, so what is attacking? When you say attacking in that way, what do you mean?
I mean, not submitting. If you don't submit to, all right, I'll give you an example. I told you recently that I'm starting a gallery that will be operating on a weekend basis.
Yeah.
Only, which would mean that everything else that I'm doing throughout the week is now adding that weekend work, which is hard work. It's very engaging work, you know, to have a store. So the part of me that I would have to go to war against is the part that says, are you fucking kidding me, man? When are you gonna relax? You're working all week, all day long, doing all this stuff, all these different things, and now you don't even have the weekends? I mean, are you crazy? What about your family? What about your kid, right? These are stuff that can hurt, man. But something to counteract this is how it made me feel to be presented with this opportunity to open up this gallery. It just made me feel, it was an exhilarating feeling. It was something I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. That sounds great. You know, it's like a performer being offered to do weekend shows, you know, every weekend. They wouldn't, you know, being offered to do that, not like trying to find ways to do it. No, being offered to do that. So you know that this is a gig that you get every weekend. So then that could be something that makes you, gives you motivation to do other stuff that you do throughout the week that perhaps not all of it would be very exciting to you. See, so you managed to find a way to turn this around, to turn it on its ear, where it's not, you know, the mind says, oh, screw this is bullshit, man. You need some rest. And then saying, well, you know, yeah, perhaps I need some rest, but what if I could replace the rest with something that is as much fun as it could be? You know, like, because would you want to rest if you wanted to, if you were a kid? You could rest because you've been working so hard doing your schoolwork throughout the week, but you could also go to a theme park, you know, and ride roller coasters and go-karts all weekend long, right? Would you want to rest instead? You see what I mean? So yeah, there are all these ways to look at your growth versus your convenience and your comfort.
So what you're saying is, in effect, that having identified these objections, these fears, these criticisms, and challenges to you moving towards what it is you want to get, the way to move forward is firstly to recognize that that's what they are. It's recognizing that this is just your safe you, the you that wants you keep you from progressing, that this is always what it's going to do to keep you in your box. So recognizing that, and then on the other side, it's focusing in on what you will get, the emotional buzz, the financial buzz, the experience, whatever it might be, from doing the thing that you have set out to do. It's the achievement, the sense of accomplishment, the whole lot. So it's focusing on the positive of that, but also recognizing that, you know, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying to trip me up. I'm just moving past you anyway. It's having that kind of clear, almost your awareness is completely heightened, and you're almost having a conversation with these gremlins and saying, I see you, get out of my way. I'm still going for this because this is really cool to get done.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
very well said, my friend.
Okay. So it's because I think what tends to happen in these situations is that without the awareness of what's happening, you get lost in just the thing, the process. So you say, I'm going to do this, really excited about it. Motivation is very high. You start on the first, you take the first step, and then, oh, maybe this isn't going to work because you didn't get the right response with the first step you've taken, or you trip up, or it doesn't work out the way you thought it was in these very early stages, and all of a sudden you start projecting, oh, maybe it's the wrong time, maybe it's the wrong decision, and all this stuff comes in. So you just get caught up in the process, and the next thing you know, you have uh, you've put it down, and you've gone back to doing what you were doing before. I mean, I've done that so many times. It's like, you get all excited for a few days, few weeks, you make some moves, and then you hit an obstacle, or you hit a second obstacle, and then, no, maybe it wasn't right anyway, and you actually talk yourself out of it. A little bit like the way we talked before about our buying decisions being all emotionally based, and then we justify it with logic afterwards. In a similar way, we make decisions not to proceed with some of these things, and then we justify it with logic afterwards.
Exactly. So there are many. See, do you play chess?
Not only as a kid, I don't play regularly at all now. I do have a nice chess set that I bought in Greece.
Nice. It's an amazing game, of course, as most people know. But it's not just amazing because of how complex it is. To me, chess teaches you about life.
Mm.
It teaches you about life in a way that uh, you can learn to regulate it without allowing emotion to get in. And of course, we talk about emotion, we talk about the subconscious, and then we talk about the programming. So with chess, I'm not suggesting, of course, like you can get emotional. You know, if you see yourself losing,
Mm.
you can get emotional. But here's the thing: the chess in and of itself is like life in the sense that it's unforgiving. You see, what you get out of it is what you put in. If you make a wrong move, you're gonna have to pay. You know, it's kind of like karmic in a sense.
Mm.
So if you look at this as playing chess against yourself, then you can realize that your mind many times predicts the move that you're going to make, but the better you become at this game, then you start predicting what the mind's move is going to be as well.
Mm.
So you just said it. You started doing things, and then you made one move, you made a second move, a third move, and it didn't seem to be working out. And so, you said there was a voice inside of you that said, "See, I told you so. I told you this wasn't gonna work. This is bullshit, man. You just wasted your time, wasted your money. You could have been chilling, having a beer. You know what I mean? Watching the game." So if you detect that voice speaking to you in those terms, then you know that this was a program in the first place. If there's something in there that is trying to justify that, yeah, something inside of me knew that this wasn't going to happen, really, something inside of me knew that this was doomed to fail, I just had to try it. Right? So if you find justification for the failure that you see in front of you, which of course is not failure, is your perception of what's happening in the moment, then you know that this was a program. So when you know that this is a program, what do? You battle that motherfucker, right? How do you do that? By extending your skills and strategizing to go around and hit him over the head with a brick, proverbial. I'll give you an example of how I did that. When I had the idea of creating this podcast, I immediately had this voice that started telling me, dude, how are you going to do that? You're going to be sitting in front of the screen, in front of the camera, like a blithering idiot. You don't even know what you're going to talk about. You don't have any strategy about this. You don't have any plan. All your thoughts are just jumbled up together. It's like, it's a mess. And on top of that, you are insane. So this is not a good idea. So because I decided to entertain that thought and find out whether or not there's any truth in it, I realized that there may be some truth in it. So then I bypassed the chance that my mind had to win by saying, look, let's assume that you're right for a second. Let's assume that you are 100% right. And I would be a total failure doing this by myself. What would it look like if I had a partner that was the voice of reason within this adventure? Could that work? You just trip this motherfucker. There is nothing to say. How could he then make a move against me? He would have to take a step back, say, you got me there. You can always try, right?
Yeah, and the rest is history.
That's right. Yeah, because, there are so many ways to bypass the voice that tells you to not act. And notice I said to not act and not to not react. Because of course you should never react. And reacting is projecting some kind of emotional response to whatever's happening around you, right? We don't want to do that because that's always a programmed response. But when you're acting, you're always creating a new path ahead of you.
Yeah, you're driving the bus.
That's right.
So, and that's actually, you've touched on a point which was coming up for me there, which is, I suppose, how do you know when this harebrained idea that you have to do whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's start a podcast or travel to Tibet or whatever it might be, how do you know when it's not such a good idea? And I suppose in listening to you, I'm answering my own question, saying, well, you don't really know that it's not a good idea. And the only thing that you can do in order to really test yourself and I suppose build your strength as a warrior against the gremlins is to actually follow through on everything that you actually decide you want to do. And keep following through regardless until you get to some point where you've said, well, okay, I've done it now. I've done 6 podcasts and okay, it hasn't worked out. So that's fine. At least I've done it and gone through the process of doing it. So, okay, now I'll stop and really I should have done this. And then you proceed and go all the way through and do that. And to me, the follow through and getting it actually done is what's building the muscle and building the strength in order to make it easier to accomplish other things that you want to accomplish as you go forward. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And that's exactly how it goes, man. You remember we talked about me being destitute, like whatever it was, like 10, 12 years ago, and saying, giving myself a deadline and saying that if I don't get a clearing of path ahead of me within a month from now, I'm going to quit, go back to Greece.
Right.
So it's a very similar pattern. It's like when that voice comes up and says, you're not good at this, you're an asshole, you're bullshit, you're nothing, you are an imposter. You don't have to try to battle that voice in its own game. You know, don't say, "Oh, fuck you! How can you? You can't tell me." No, you just accept the sentiments and
The challenge
the
almost.
challenge, yeah, and make it exactly turn it into a challenge. Be like, okay, maybe you're right, but guess what? I will give myself this many chances, so this much time, and we'll see how it turns out. And the mind that is trying to trip you there can hardly, in most cases, find ways to rebuttal this. So then you get to start being on your path, and with the added bonus of having the programs go into the background now. You know, they move into the background and they don't bother you until said time. It's like making a deal. You know what I mean? Like you make a deal with someone. You're going to give me, you go to a financier, right? And you say, well, give me whatever, $10,000. I need to engage in this business venture. And they're not going to bother, you know, if they think that the business venture is a good idea. Yeah, why not? You know, it's worth trying. They're not going to bother you unless it's time to start seeing results. So if they don't bother you, guess what? Then you are almost fully empowered to walk that walk. And then you go out there like your life depended on it, you know, because it does. You know, if you want, like, let's say you went on a big hike, you know, up in a mountain somewhere, and you light a fire, chilling, which of course is something you can never do these days. But let's assume that you can do it, you know, like it's a Western, and you light a fire and you just cooking that rabbit, because it's always rabbit.
Yeah, and beans.
And beans. I know. So, so you're cooking the rabbit, and then you start hearing howling voices, and you're surrounded by wolves, you know, or by coyotes or whatever. And now, what are you gonna do? There's no way out. You have to find a way to escape. You're not going to just sit back and just be eaten, right? You're going to come up with a strategy, and you're going to say to yourself, I will not give up. I will not give up unless, you know, there's absolutely nothing I can do, right? You have to engage as if your life depended on this. And that's of course, if you are interested in living in happy land, and by happy I mean fulfillment land, empowerment land, kick-ass land. That's warrior land.
So obviously, then the more we do this, and like and it's a skill, clearly, because the more we do it, the better we get at it. And what we're getting better at is pushing through, as well as identifying these gremlins there and identifying how we help ourselves to get past them by focusing on what we really want. And the other key is getting to a point where at least we've accomplished. So it's not about whether the business that you set up has made $1 million. It's about the fact that you set up the business and you follow it all the way through. And then if there's another milestone to be met within that, then you do that. But you keep doing it in order to show that you're good at doing what you say you're going to do. You're good at going after things that you want to create or that you want to achieve. And that, in effect, as I see it, is what's empowering you and strengthening you to keep doing that in your life, so that you're continually reaching and developing and growing to be that warrior becoming stronger and stronger, so that these minor things don't phase you anymore. Even the medium things don't phase you anymore. You just go straight for it.
Exactly. Brilliant. Brilliant, my friend. All you need to do is to come up with ways to not quit. You see, hey, you start a business. You say, you said it brilliantly. You don't have to set up a goal that sounds ridiculous. Okay, if I don't make $1 million, in a year, then I'm an asshole. No, you set goals that only show that you are actually moving towards the right direction, right? So you could say, okay, if I can make, if I can pay all my expenses that this business venture is asking for, because I'm doing it as a side thing, let's say, for example, with what I'm doing with my gallery, if I can pay all my expenses within the first month, and I keep on having all my expenses taken care of out of running it, then I have achieved my first landmark, my first success. Then after I have reached that, what's my next goal? My next goal is making making $1,000 profit per month, right? And then you get there. And of course, that doesn't suggest that you couldn't just completely skyrocket and go kick some ass and in 6 months you make $2 million, right? This isn't how it works, because once you don't have to deal with all the forces that are trying to make you and convince you to not engage, to not do it, to not try it, to not put yourself out there and move forward, if you manage to take those steps, move on that path without heavy expectations, then it works more often than not that this thing takes off and you are fully surprised yourself at how successful you're being. Of course, there's no surprise there because you are doing things that you are loving. You are fully excited and fully empowered. And that's how you step into a life of fulfillment rather than a life of boredom and a life of, oh my God, I have to do this again. I can't, I want to stay in bed, all day long. When you find yourself wanting to stay in bed all day long, that's a clear indication that where your life is at this moment is not on the right path.
Yeah.
So
either that, or you've basically given up. You've given in to the gremlins.
Right.
So even the things that where what you'd like to do, you keep reacting to the gremlins and allowing them to win and not actually taking them on and challenging them.
Exactly.
Cool. So I think that's been really interesting. I've been reading a book or listening to a book called Tiny Habits. And it actually speaks a lot to that idea that if you are trying to take on something that's difficult, whether it be instilling a habit in yourself or, just tackling a job, even if it was only a one-off thing, they suggest that you literally pick the smallest thing that you can do. So if you want to do, a 30-minute workout every day, start off by doing a 1-minute workout, do 1 press up and 1 squat, etc., and establish a pattern of doing it first and then gradually increase it. Because it's more important to establish the pattern and then increase the volume than it is to go straight in and start to have a high volume, do the full 30 minutes. Because if you haven't done enough to establish it, then the gremlins come in, and the first opportunity, you're going to say, oh, I haven't got time to do that 30 minutes. Can't do it.
Right.
And the same way with it's the old adage of, how do you eat the elephant? One small piece at a time.
Every day that we don't quit what our heart is asking for is a victorious day. So, yes, little steps, tiny steps. Because as they say in The Secret, right, when you're driving at night, you don't need to be able to see the entire distance ahead of you in order to get somewhere. Like you're driving at night, it's very dark, you're going through the mountains. All you need to see is a few feet ahead. This is what your lights are providing the vision of just being able to see just a few feet ahead. And if you can cover that distance, then the next few feet are going to reveal themselves to you. So I think actually this is a brilliant way of dealing with life. I will not get to run the whole marathon today, but I will do 100 meters of it, right? Does this make sense? And then
Yeah.
if I prove myself that I can, oh, look, I ran the 100 meters. That's pretty awesome. I didn't think I could do that. I wonder what else I thought I couldn't do, but I really can. And so one step leads to the next, to the next, to the next. Before you know it, you have arrived. This is what most of these gurus, the marketing gurus and such, that people, or all kinds of gurus, I suppose, this is how they got there. They didn't just poof manifest into that kind of, they started following the notion that all I need to do is just that little thing, that little increment. I need to walk that distance, that small distance. And then when they got there, it's like, oh, I walked it. Look at that. I wonder if I can smoke a little something to reward myself, and then move another part of this distance. So, and of course, as I mentioned that, make sure you reward yourself properly for having covered that distance, said distance. If I run the 10 meters, I should have a reward waiting for me on the other end, because on the other end of it, because that's what the subconscious, being a child, this is, it responds really very well to reward and punishment, just like a dog. So reward yourself, and perhaps put in some keys in this mission that punish yourself as well if you don't do what you said you would do. It is important to train yourself, to train the warrior inside of you to always do what you said you will do. That's called integrity. So integrity is like a muscle. So train yourself to move the distance if you said you would, in the time increment that you said that you would. Go there, take the step, and find that fulfillment. Find that fulfillment in the little victory, because the little victory is the big victory. The big victory is just a bunch of little victories put together. Don't quit if you don't enjoy quitting. If you don't get any massive victorious empowerment from quitting, don't allow yourself to do it. Trick your mind into not doing it. It's just really a trick. It's a game your mind is going to play, and consider the possibility that your mind always wins at that game. So you're always the loser, because your mind always convinces you to not do it. And that bastard is not that well equipped. Is not as well equipped as he or she thinks they are. But we have been trained to listen to those programs. We've been trained to listen to those voices. But we can also start training to not. It's not that hard. All you have to do is start doing it.
Yeah. And here we are on episode 27.
And so, as we always say, until next week, until next Wednesday.
Let's be careful out there.
And don't let your mind kill you.
Thanks for listening to Your Mind is Trying to Kill You with Alexandros Megas and Vincent Byrne. If you like our show and want to make sure that you don't miss an episode, then we would love if you would subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And you'd be doing us a big favor if you would support us by leaving a review as well. It would also be great if you would take a screenshot of this episode on your smartphone and share it on social media. So join us next Wednesday when we talk more about mind hacking and taking back control of your life. Until then, have a great week.